payment um, amount is today. So go ahead and put that number that you think the average down payment on a house is today in the chat, and we'll see what everybody comes up with. So this may or may not surprise you, but the average down payment amount today is $78,831. $78,831. But how does that break down? So the first QR code that I have on screen is going to take you out to Bankrate. And what we learned from our friends at Bankrate is that when we look at down payment for a home, 20% is what we typically hear. But a lot of times people are not making a 20% down payment. So we break this down by age group. In the 26 to 34-year-old age range, people are really just putting down about 10% on average of the purchase price. 35 to 44, we see at about 14%. 45 to 59, 17. So we're still under that 20% threshold that we always think is the magic number. We start to see folks that are 60 years and older putting down larger down payments. This makes sense to me because they're probably selling an existing home, they have equity, they have other savings, things like that. But the other thing to think about is the amount of the down payment that you need is also going to vary by the type of mortgage that you get. And so if you're getting a conventional loan, the minimum down payment requirement for that is just 3% of the purchase price. Um, conventional and FHA loans are the most typical type of loans. And so we're looking at about 3 to 3.5% minimum down payment requirement. Adjustable rate loan, this is where your rate is going to fluctuate based on the market. You might have a little bit of a higher down payment requirement at 5%. Jumbo loans are typically going to be 10%. And then we see if you qualify for a VA, Veteran Assistant, or USDA, which is that rural loan, there could be no minimum down payment requirement. So the first thing I always like to do is just sort of debunk that myth. Like homeownership is out of my reach because 20% of a purchase price is a way too big of a number for me to digest. So let me take you out to this QR code because there was some great information from our friends at Bankrate, and I just wanted to take a minute and share it with you. So if you click on the QR code, it's going to take you out here and it's going to take you to, what is the average down payment on a house? This is where I got that number. But you can also scroll through and see how the median home prices have changed over time. Look at what these median home prices are by state and really start to break down the different types of loans, get information about each of those, and all the different things that make up the down payment of your home because there's a lot of different things that go into that. So this is the first resource that I did want to just go out there and share with you. Okay. But then the question becomes, okay, I need to save 15 or 10% for the down purchase price of a home. But how much home can I actually afford, right? If I'm looking at a house that's $400,000, my down payment is going to be a little bit higher than if I'm looking at a house that's $200,000. And so I think the next question really is, what can I reasonably afford to pay for a home? And so this QR code on screen is going to take you back out to NerdWallet where you can access a calculator. And from this calculator, you can go in there and say, okay, here's the home purchase price. The example that we see on screen here is $300,000. A 20% down payment is going to be $60,000 with the average interest rate of about 6.8% today. Here's my loan term, and then it's going to show you what your potential monthly payment is going to be. Because when we start to think about home ownership, of course, we need to make sure that we're making sure that we can afford to pay for that home, but also live within our means as well. Manage any emergencies that come up within the home or outside of the home, still save for our mid-range, short-term, and long-term goals. And so this is a really helpful tool to help you get your arms around exactly how much you can afford each month. And then based on that, what the purchase price of your home is. And then based on those percentages, loan type, things like that, then you can really start to get a good idea of how much you need to save for down payment. Before we can do anything um, regarding saving or budgeting, we have to set goals. And so when we start to think about saving our money, we can't do that unless we have, first of all, realistic goals that we've identified. What are we actually saving for, and how much is it going to cost us? How long is it going to take? But then also a budget that supports those goals. So this is our first step. Once we have an idea of how much we want to save. So if I'm sticking with that number of about $78,000, let's say that this is my goal. And so I want to make sure that my goals are SMART. And we all know what this means, probably, but it means that it's specific. So I know that I am specifically saving for the down payment on a home, and I need about $78,000. We also want to make sure that it's measurable. So can I break that $78,000 down into monthly, weekly, annual payments and measure that over time? If by year one I said I needed to save $12,000 and I'm only at 11,000, then I need to adjust my goal or I need to adjust my spending to meet that goal. So we want to make sure that our goals are specific, measurable, achievable. Is this something I can realistically do? Um, Time bound, and then realistic, right? And so we have to make sure that we're setting time limits, and these are things that we can actually achieve. When we think about goals and we think about home ownership, it's not just saving for a home. So I think one of the things that we can sometimes get wrapped up in is saying, okay, I have this big overarching goal that I want to achieve, whether it's home ownership or the cost of education or retirement. And all my focus goes there, and I forget about the other things that I want to do. So, for example, if I'm saving for my new home, at some point in that home, I'm going to want furniture. I'm going to want blinds. I'm going to want things like that. During the time that I'm saving, I'm still going to probably have emergencies, flat tires. People might get sick. Things are going to happen. I'm probably going to want to go on vacation. And so when we start to think about creating a realistic plan to save for the down payment on a home, make sure that you include all the other things that you want to save for as well, so that you're building a comprehensive budget, savings plan, and goal achievement plan. And so we know that we should be saving in these different categories that we see on screen. And perhaps the most important savings category of all that isn't listed here is an emergency fund. So we know that we should have about 3 to 6 months of our living expenses in an emergency fund so that we're not derailed if something happens. And so those regular automatic contributions to all of our different goals are really going to be key. And then we can say, all right, here's my goal map. I know that I need $78,000 for the purchase price of this home. By the way, I did some math ahead of time, and let's say that I wanted to reach this goal in 6 years, right? If I divide $78,000 by 6 years, and then I break that down by 52 weeks in a year, it shakes out to about $250 a week. So if I get paid every 2 weeks, and I'm able to automate $500 out of my paycheck into maybe a high yield savings account to help me achieve that goal even faster, I can reasonably reach my goal in 6 years. That is so much nicer to me, $250, than, oh my gosh, I need $78,000 today. And so that's something that we really want to do when we're thinking about those goals that are SMART, realistic, time-bound, actually achievable. Break them up into milestones. So we can make this goal map, right? What do I want to achieve? I want to buy a house. How much money do I need? $78,000. When is this goal going to be achieved? About 6 years. And what do I need to do? I need to automate $250 a week into my high yield savings account so that I can achieve my goal. Sounds pretty simple. The next thing, though, that we need to do, and this is the hard part, it still sounds easy, but when we start to put pen to paper and do it, this gets hard. So it's creating a realistic budget or spending plan that supports that homeownership savings goal, or whatever the goal is that we want to reach. And this is what's hard about it. As humans, we have human nature, and our human nature is to say, you know what, I work really hard. I want to do the things that I want to do. We live in a society of instant gratification, right? I want to go out to eat tonight. I don't want to cook dinner tonight. I'm tired. I want to get my nails done. I want to have my hair done. I want to go out to the movies. I want to go see the movie in IMAX. I want to do all these different things. And so when we can build a priority spending plan or a budget that includes those goals, what it lets us do is say, okay, I know that I need to save $500 every 2 weeks, right? $250 a week toward my goal. I can put that in my budget and I can say, okay, well, if I'm a little bit short, where can I cut other areas in my budget, even temporarily, so that I can achieve that goal, right? How can I still make sure that I'm automating contributions to my emergency savings fund as well? And so this is where building the budget comes into play. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. But again, we can't realistically save until we have a budget which shows us how much we're saving, how much we have, where every dollar that we make is going. So the first thing we have to do, of course, is identify our net income. And the important thing about this is to make sure that we're using income that we can rely on consistently. So if it's bonuses or child support, but it's not consistent every month, commission, anything like that, you want to make sure that you're not including it, or you're including only the minimum that you can rely on in that monthly budget. Anything extra is gravy. You put that into your high yield savings account to save for your home ownership down payment fund even faster. But the key is, if you can't realistically rely on it and you haven't budgeted for it, you're still on track to meet your goal. When you get it, you can meet your goal even faster. So that's the first thing, is identifying that income that we know we're going to get regularly and consistently. The second thing is to identify and document our monthly expenses. Where are we spending our money? Again, sounds pretty easy, but when we start to do this, it becomes a little bit more difficult. So go ahead and put in the chat if anybody has ever had an experience documenting their expenses. So, every time you spend money, you write it down on a piece of paper, or you put it in your phone, whether it's a dollar at a vending machine or whatever it is. And then at the end of the month, you see where your money goes. This is a very eye-opening experience. And again, if you've had experience with it, go ahead and share in the chat what you found. I'll be honest with you. I always find that I spend more money than I think I do at the grocery store, always. And secondly, I can't stop myself from buying coffee. And I know it's cliche, but it's true. And so these are the things that it shows us. But the other thing that it does is, when we're building that monthly budget, it helps us budget realistically, so that we don't get to the end of the month and say, I don't get it. I created a budget. I set aside the money for groceries, but I'm still short because we didn't set aside enough, right? And so then what we want to do is make sure that we're comparing what we think we're spending to what we're actually spending, so that we can create a budget or a spending plan that works. The template that I show you on screen, I really like, because it's got categories in here, and then it's got an amounts and adjustments columns, so that we can make adjustments during the month, throughout the month, so that we're not getting to the end of the month saying, oh my gosh, I spent more than I thought I did. Now I'm short on my savings goal. We can adjust that as we go along. The other thing that we have to pay attention to, though, is those expenses. And so when we're thinking about creating a budget that works and supports our savings goals, those expenses that are fixed, they're the same every month, those are the easiest to plan for. We know what they're going to be. We know they're going to happen. It's no problem. When we come to variable expenses, these are things we can see up here, like clothes, gas, utilities. These things happen every month maybe, but the amount might change. And so we want to make sure that we're identifying an average, or the worst case scenario for that expense. And if we say we're going to spend $100 on utilities, but we only spend $75 on utilities, I take that extra $25, I put it into my savings account that I'm using to save for the down payment on my house, and that money adds up and I get there even faster. When we start to plan for periodic expenses, it's the same thing. So these are things like holidays, back to school time, things that don't happen every month, and the amounts might change. And when we start to look at a goal over, let's say, in our example here, 6 years, this makes a difference. If I've planned to spend $1,000 throughout the year on holidays, and I can make adjustments to my budget, do different creative things where I only spend $500 on holidays throughout the year, I can take that other $500 and put it into my savings account and achieve my goal even faster. So you guys see where I'm going with this, but you can't start to do this until you really have a dedicated plan where you know that every dollar has a purpose. And if I'm not using it, then I can put it in that account to reach my goal faster. And so this just sort of breaks down these expenses that I just talked about, right? Those periodic expenses, the easiest way to do it is identify the average, divide by 12, put that amount into your monthly budget, and then go from there. And then once we have our income and our expenses, the next thing we need to do is just add those things up and do the math, right? We need to take our total expenses, subtract that from our total income, and if we have extra at the end of each month, then we have a surplus. And so we can use that money to either, do something fun or unplanned that we didn't previously budget for. If we want to reach our goal of homeownership faster, we can take it and put it into our savings account. But this becomes like a game, right? The goal is to create as much of a surplus as we possibly can every single month so that we can achieve that savings goal even faster, while still taking care of the other things that we have to take care of and saving for emergencies and things like that. So that was like quick budgeting 101. Again, I'm going to remind you, if you don't have a budget, like a solid budget that you use every single month, please reach out to us. We'll do this together. It's free. It costs you nothing. We can factor in your down payment savings amount in there. And then that way you've got a plan. Oh, you might deviate from the plan of $100 or $20 every month, but you have a plan and you're on that road to achieving your goal. So then the next thing that we want to do is really identify ways that we can increase savings to achieve that goal. And so here's some things, right? Number one, automate those contributions. I think this is probably the most important thing that we can do. Automate those contributions before we even see them. So my suggestion would be, we're saving for the down payment on a home. Open up a high yield savings account because you're going to get more interest. I love Bankrate, BANKRATE.com. You can go to Bankrate and you can say, I'm searching for a high yield savings account. You can compare different savings accounts on their site and identify the one that works the best for you. Probably looking for one that doesn't have any monthly fees, maybe a low minimum balance requirement to open, depending on what you have, and something that's going to allow you to make automatic contributions. But that's the first thing you want to do. Identify a separate account that you don't use for anything else and automate those contributions directly from your paycheck, out of sight, out of mind. It's happening. You know it. That's great. And then any additional income you can just put into that account extra, right? The second thing, and again, I know this sounds a little bit cliche, but you guys, it's true, is go through that budget, sit down with your significant other, your family members, have the conversation. We have a goal. Our goal is to save for the down payment on a house in 6 years. We're moving in 6 years. And you know what? This is going to take everybody working together. Have the conversation. Identify your wants and your needs and cut those expenses that are not necessary. Keeping in mind that, one, you're doing this for a really important reason. You're going to get this down payment. But two, this is temporary, right? So you might cut things for the next several years, but things are going to change. You might get a raise at work. You might achieve your goal faster. When you do achieve your goal, those things change. And so all of these things that we're doing, these changes that we're making, they're temporary. But what you might find, for example, is you stop getting your nails professionally done, or you stop paying for apps, subscriptions, cable. You start working out at home instead of going to the gym. You start doing these little things to make more money in your budget to achieve your savings goal, and then pretty soon you don't miss it. you've taken up running. And so you're staying fit that way without paying for a gym membership, for example. But it really is going through the budget and saying, okay, what are those things that I absolutely have to survive, right? I have to have a roof over my head and I have to have food to eat. But then how can I get those things that I need and save money while doing it, right? So that's cutting our unnecessary expenses. There's a strategy called step down spending. So we'll talk about this in a minute. But basically, what this means is anything that you want to do, how can you do that for no or little money? Reduce your spending, and then this is key, redirect it. So, I heard somebody say, every time I choose not to stop at Starbucks and pay $7 for a cup of coffee, I take that $7 that I would have spent and I pick up my phone. I automatically send that $7 to my savings account. I was like, that is a fantastic idea. $7 doesn't seem like a whole lot of money, but if I do that 2 or 3 times a month for different expenses, when I say to myself, no, I have a goal, I want to buy this house, I'm going to go home and make myself a cup of coffee. And instead of spending that $7, I'm going to redirect it into my savings accounts. Little things like this add up. And then obviously increase your income, right? And so we'll talk about this in a minute. So here are some other strategies to help you do the things that we're talking about. Track those expenses. First and foremost, see where your money's going. Stop using credit. If you have debt, create a plan to reduce and eliminate that debt. It's going to feel almost impossible for you to save if you're marred down in debt every single month. Adopt a habit of paying yourself first. And so we talked about this. When you get paid, automatically put those funds in your savings account. Save when payments are reduced. So, in the winter months, I'm not spending as much on air conditioning. My heat's a little cheaper. Keep my budget the same. Save that money. Anytime you get windfalls, so whether it's a tax return or a gift or somebody gives you money for any reason, no matter how big or small, throw it in the savings account. Adding those small contributions at a higher rate of return is really going to add up quickly. Comparison shop, delay purchases. So, there's this idea of the psychology of money and the fact that we spend money based on our habits and the relationship that we bring from our baggage in the past with money. And really thinking about how we feel when we need to spend is a big deal. So, let's say that I see, a new television that I really want. My television works. It's good. It's okay. But it's not as big. It's not as new. If I wait and delay that purchase by about 48 hours, a lot of times that sort of immediate need, I need that now, that goes away. Shopping with a list is a big, big thing that's going to help us save money. Using those coupons and apps, apps that help us round up, things like that. Cooking at home, bringing lunch, declaring thrifty weeks, shopping with goals in mind, savings on utilities. So, reach out to your utility companies, reach out to your service providers. You guys, I just reached out to my phone provider. I do this about every year or two because I carry my son and my mother as well as my family on my phone. And I feel like every time I reach out, they're like, oh, yes, we do have a different plan. I just did this and saved about $100 a month. So reach out to those service providers. So just different things like that are really going to add up. And then this idea of step down spending, right? So this idea that whatever it is that you want or want to do, really getting creative and thinking about how you can do it on the cheap. So the example that we see here, of course, is with cable. I feel like that's example we always use because it's even these apps and streaming devices now, when I add them up, I'm still spending over $100 on, Netflix and Hulu and all the things combined. So, we take that and we say, okay, like I can reduce this from $120 just to $70 if I cut a little bit and just get movie channels. If I reduce this down to basic channels, I can maybe spend only 50. If I reduce this down to local channels, I can spend nothing. So you guys get the idea. But if we apply this action and really adopt the thrifty mindset, it starts to help, right? But then really making these apps work for you. So there are so many different savings apps and strategies out there, and they can help us. They can help us increase our income. They can help us compare and save money. Really, really good. So the QR code on screen is going to take you out to an article from the Penny Hoarder. And essentially, keeping in mind that we're using savings apps across 5 basic categories, right? The first category is apps that allow us to earn cash back and rewards. So there are a lot of apps out there where we can just put them in our phone, and the things that we spend money on each day, we're going to get some cash back and rewards. It might not be a ton of money, but even if it's $15, $20 a month, it's $15, $20 a month extra you didn't have. You throw it into that account to get there even faster, right? The next category of savings apps is to help us create automatic savings. And so this would be things like that round up and keep the change. Every time we make a purchase, if it's $18.52, we round it up to $19. This app automatically takes our change and puts it away. At the end of the month, we put it into our savings account. Things like that. There's another category of apps that are going to help us lower those recurring expenses. So where am I spending money every single month? Maybe it's apps, maybe it's subscriptions, and where can I dial that back? The next category of apps is going to help us save and earn money on groceries, stuff that we buy every day. So using different coupons, different shopping strategies, things like that, cash back when we shop at certain places. And then the next category of apps is going to help us track and compare price, so that if we're looking for a bit of a higher dollar item, we can compare that and make sure that we're getting the best price. I want to buy it at Home Depot, but I know at Lowe's it's 20% cheaper. If I tell Home Depot, hey, here it is at Lowe's, this app is going to help me, I save 20 bucks. And then again, the idea here is every little amount that you're able to save, you throw into that account. These things add up very, very quickly. So let me take you out to this article because it was really interesting, and it links us to these different apps, some of them that are really, really good. So when we look across these apps in the different categories, it's going to show us on this Penny Hoarder website the most common ones, and then link you right there to them. So when you hang up today, there's 2 tasks for you. First is to call MMI and create a budget. Second is to go out to this page and just visit these different apps and put them on your phone, because these things are going to help you save money. And then the third task I have for you is to go to bankrate.com, identify a high yield savings account, open it, and start to throw some money in there. So those are 3 things that you can do today when you leave. Okay, let's get back to our presentation. So that's using those apps and those different strategies to help you save. And then it is doing all of these things and creating a realistic down payment fund. So there's steps to this, right? The first thing that we want to do is set a realistic savings goal. So again, we use $78,000 for the purposes of this webinar, but you want to go out there and say, okay, based on my budget, based on where I live, what is the average price of homes in my area? How much can I reasonably afford? Based on what I can reasonably afford, what am I looking at as a potential down payment goal? Yours might not be $78,000, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but you've got to have a target. And it doesn't have to be exact, but it does have to be a pretty educated estimate. So that's the first thing to do. Set that realistic savings goal. Make sure that you're including things that are included in the down payment though. So you're going to need to plan for closing costs, the cost of an inspection, consider the type of mortgage you might qualify. Are you a veteran? Could you get a VA loan? This is going to save you significant money. Are there down payment assistance programs in the area where you live that you qualify for? This is going to save you a lot of money. So set that realistic goal first and foremost. Secondly, identify a clear savings timeline. So again, I took that number $78,000 and I'm going to tell you the truth. Before we sat down and did this webinar today, I was like, oh, $78,000. What if I want to save for this in 5 years? And then I broke that down by week and I was like, oh, that's a little high. So, so I said, okay, I'm going to actually set this goal to save for in 6 years, right? So that's how you want to do it. Identify a clear savings timeline, just based on what you know you can afford today. Then you want to go out there and open that dedicated down payment account. Again, I suggest a high yield savings account. You're going to get a couple of points extra when you look at your interest. Today, on average, the average high yield savings account is going to yield you between 4 and 4.2%. When you compare that to a regular savings account, you're looking at about 1 or less. So that compound interest, it makes a little bit of a difference. You know, when we start to look at a number like 20,000, 40,000, 50,000, that money is going to grow faster in a high yield account. So open that account. And then once you do that and you've said, okay, I'm going to save this $250 every week, I get paid, you know, every week or every 2 weeks. Automate those regular savings contributions. Do it immediately. Go to your HR website, put that number in there. That money goes automatically into your account. You know you're saving for it. If you need to dial that back temporarily, okay, but you're still staying on the road. And then the next thing would be to really sit down and review and revise that budget to maximize where you're saving. So you've identified a budget and then you want to go through it again. Okay, where can I save money? What are all the different things that I can do? So we talked about the little sort of nickel and dime things that you can do, but another big thing is to increase your income. We are all good at something. My ex-husband is great at making, he used to make workout equipment. I'd come home and there'd be PVC pipe cooking in the oven. I was like, what is happening here? Like, I'm making a workout bar. Whatever it is, think about what you're good at. Is it tutoring? Is it teaching? Is it coaching? Is it crafts? Is it real estate? How can you create a side hustle? And all the money that you get from that side hustle, throw it in your account. Maybe you're delivering food with DoorDash. Whatever it is to increase your income, do it. There are websites. The two that I check out often to work from home are Upwork and Fiverr, right? But there's tons of websites out there, tons of different ideas for you to create a side hustle. But this is going to be important because the more money that you can generate, the more money that you can save. And I think once we start to do that, it's surprising. It's surprising how much money you can make when you turn a hobby into something that's going to make money, right? Um, Track your progress and make adjustments as necessary. This is really important. So just like we would do with a budget, we want to look at our savings account and say, okay, when I take that $78,000 and I divide that by 6, my $250 a week should add up to about $13,000 a year. When I start to get toward the end of year one, I want to look and see, because if I don't have $13,000 in that account, I need to make some adjustments, right? If I have $15,000 in that account, I need to make some adjustments because that means that I can reach my goal faster. I can make some changes. But if we're not tracking our progress and making adjustments as we get raises, as we get windfall money, as things change, then pretty soon we're off track with our goal and we don't even know it. So it's hard for us to get back on track. And then finally, explore those down payment assistance options. I know that Oro is available and ready to help with all these things. I don't want you to forget about the power of this money. So particularly if you are a first-time home buyer, in the county where you're looking to purchase, in the state, in the city, there are different down payment assistance funds that can really, really translate into a lot of money to purchase your home. Sometimes even all the money that you might need, right? And so you want to explore all those different options, add these things together. think about it like, um, I have a child that's getting ready to go to college in about a year, and so that's what I'm consumed with, right? But I think about this like a college savings fund. The name of the game is to maximize as much as I can. So it's different scholarships, different grants, who's going to help me and my family, how am I going to adjust my budget, putting all these things together to create a realistic plan. It's the same thing when you're saving for the down payment on a home. What down payment assistance funds are out there, who's willing to give me gifts, what do I have in my savings that I can utilize, how can I increase my expenses or decrease my expenses and increase my income, and putting all these together to really make sure that you're achieving that goal. And then finally, utilize tools and resources. So this is just one. So when we click on the QR code here, it's going to take us out to an article from our friends at NerdWallet. There's two websites that I really love, you guys. It's NerdWallet and Bankrate. I like them so much because they're trusted resources. But these guys are going to give you a step-by-step guide. Many of the things that we talked about, but also link you out to other tools and resources. So please don't forget about those. Things like, where do I find down payment assistance funds? What are the different websites? Tara gave me two, but what other websites can I go to try to create a side hustle? What other savings strategies and apps are out there? So utilize those resources that are available to you. And then the last resource that I'm sharing with you, again, is our online counseling with MMI. So let me take you out to these resources before we do Q&A so that I can show you what I'm talking about. When I go to NerdWallet and I'm looking at these, like this step-by-step guide, for every step that we talked about, right? Set a goal, it's going to say, okay, well, here's a calculator. How much can I afford? What is a down payment? What's included in it? What type of loans might I qualify for? And what are the exact things that I need to qualify for all of these loans so that I can really educate myself on it? So it's got tips and tools and videos. How much do I need for closing? Here's a calculator. How much should I set aside for moving expenses? Because I got to factor that in. What are the top mortgage lenders today? What are some other ways that I could tighten my budget? Compare car insurance rates. It's going to take you out to different websites. Refinance student loans. It's going to take you out to different websites. So and this is just one. If you go out there and do a Google search for how to save for a house, it's going to take you to lists like this from reputable organizations like Bankrate, like NerdWallet, like Fidelity, Investopedia, things that are trusted, and they're going to link you out to other resources, things that you didn't think about, right? We continue on. So saving for raises, earning extra money, 25 ways to make money online and offline. So all the different strategies that we talked about, utilize these resources to start to think about, okay, where can I find all these things? In the presentation, you have a link to just one, and this is a pretty good one. I spent a good hour or two just clicking through all of these sites. There was some great information out there. All right. And then finally, I did want to show you guys our online counseling page at MMI. That QR code is going to take you right here. And if you want to start your journey with MMI, you want to create a budget, you want to talk about paying off debt, anything like that, you want to do the education for pre-purchase education or counseling, whatever, you can start your counseling journey online confidentially and free right here. You don't even have to talk to anybody. So those are the resources that I had to share with you. And that, my friends, is it. So we've got about 10 minutes left for questions. This is a summary of what we talked about. I do have to tell you that I am not a tax professional or an attorney, and this is my disclaimer. But I'm going to leave our contact information up on screen while we talk about what questions you have.
Thank you so much, Tara. Really, really appreciate all the practical advice and insights. I also want to plug Oro as another one-stop shop where folks can access a lot of tools and resources on our platform. All of you on the call have free access to the Oro platform. We also have a personal concierge that can help you navigate any questions that you have at any point in your housing journey. So I just wanted to plug Oro here. And then before we jump into Q&A, I just want to do a very quick poll and get feedback from all of you. And once we have that feedback, we can jump into a few minutes of Q&A. So give me a second. I'm going to launch it right now. Let's see. Hopefully, let's see. Are you seeing the poll, everyone?
I'm seeing it.
Okay. So we just have a few questions about your feedback on the seminar, on the webinar, how you rate it, and if you have any assistance that you need or any topics that you'd want to suggest for next time. Please, if all of you could participate and respond, we'd really, really appreciate it. Really helps us customize our monthly webinars for you all each month. We're trying to address topics that are super relevant, whether you're a renter, a buyer, or an owner. And our next webinar is scheduled for August 27th, I believe. I think it's going to be focused a little bit more for owners on whether you should place your home in a trust. So that one will be coming up and we'll be sending more information about that soon. Okay, I'll give it another quick 30 seconds. If you could please respond and let us know your thoughts. Okay. Another few seconds. Okay. Great. Let's see here. There's a QR code. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you all. Really appreciate taking the time to do that. Okay. So Tara, we're going to jump into a little Q&A. It's now about 4:50 Eastern, 1:50 Pacific. If any of you have any questions that you'd like to pose for Tara, please send them to us via the chat or in the Q&A box, and we can address them. I'll kick off with a specific question because I think a lot of folks struggle with this as they're thinking about their goals for buying a home. Is it more important to pay down the debt that I have? You know, we build up our debt over time with credit cards and other purchases. Is it more important to pay down my debt or to start saving, or is there a strategy where we can do both? Could you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's one that we get a lot. Um, I think the answer here for me is that we should be in a position where we're trying to do this simultaneously. At minimum, we have got to be contributing to an emergency savings account. At minimum, we have to be saving for that. If we're not, and an emergency happens because we know it will, we just don't know when, it means that we are either increasing our debt load or we're using money that we've set aside for necessary expenses, living expenses to handle that emergency. Neither of those is going to put us in a good place. And so, really, the name of the game is to create a plan that is workable for you to manage the debt that you have if you have it, so that you can save simultaneously and then eventually pay off that debt in a reasonable amount of time and really start to bump up your savings. That's the goal. There's different ways to pay down debt. I think sometimes, especially now, we see consumer debt at the highest levels that it's ever been. And I think that it can feel insurmountable to most of us. But please know that if you are struggling with debt and this is something that's really stopping you from achieving, even regular goals, even regular savings goals, or even simply just being able to comfortably afford groceries and gas, um, that there are resources out there to help you. So you can reach out to MMI. We can walk you through different strategies to pay down debt quicker on your own. get help with a debt management plan, and then any other options that you might be considering as well.
Awesome. Thank you. So we have one question that's been submitted. I feel like saving money means stopping doing activities that I enjoy. They don't cost money, but they cost time. How would you handle managing that dilemma or that balance in terms of being able to save time, still being able to enjoy activities that I like, and being able to save toward
Yeah.
buying a home?
Yeah, so it's an important question and it's a challenging one. Again, especially I think in today's economy. Um, I have found success in doing this by saying, okay, I'm gonna try to increase my income doing things that I like. Um, so let me give you an example. I like yoga. And instead of paying to take yoga, I've identified a way that I could get a yoga certification, teach classes sporadically at a local studio, and generate a little bit of income for that, right? So that's just one example. But I think, so if we can sort of combine the things that we like to do with ways that we can save and things that we can do to generate income, that's going to be really helpful for us. But I think as hokey as it sounds, really considering the value in taking advantage of the things that we already have. What's happening in my neighborhood? What's happening in my community? Like what is free and how do I do that? Take picnic lunch with me or whatever so that I'm not spending money, but I'm still having a good time, and I'm saving as well. So those are just some of the things that I do personally, but I think small things make a big impact when we add them all together.
That's great. That's really great advice, and really practical because you can sort of relate to your own situation. Yeah, I think that's great. And this is sort of related, so maybe it's a little bit repetitive, but just a question around, prioritizing areas for saving. So, if you're in a situation where, you've got a pretty high housing payment, so whether it's rent or what have you, each month you have some other expenses that you're managing through, you have some debt, and you definitely want to save toward, a down payment. Is there a way to think through and prioritize the different areas that, you know, you would focus on in terms of creating your budget and saving? And I know you mentioned already the emergency fund, which I think is really important. Are there other specific considerations or ways that you can help folks, think about that and prioritize for saving?
Yeah, so I mean so I do this a lot of times when we teach a budgeting class, and I've also done with my family. I've done this, right? Like I'll take a piece of paper and I will write down needs and wants, and I make a little T, and we write down the things that we like truly need to survive. Um, and then when I think about housing, that's a big one, right? That's a big one. And it's very expensive, regardless of where we live, but in some places more than others. And so if it's not as easy and simple as, oh, I'm gonna do my own nails, or I'm gonna, cook dinner at home, then it is really starting to think about, okay, this is a big payment. What are the most important things that I have to have? If I don't have a reliable transportation, I can't get to work to make money. So those types of, like, I start to prioritize that way, right? What are the things that I absolutely have to have? And sort of it's this waterfall. But then if it's a big expense, like something like a car or a house, really starting to think about, even if it feels a little bit drastic, could I get a roommate? I mean, could I rent space in my home? Could I carpool? Could I get rid of my car and get something less expensive? So even if it feels like, gosh, this is a really big drastic thing, again, it's temporary. And it could save us a lot of money, particularly when we're thinking about what are those necessary expenses? Because if I'm not meeting those, um, then in trouble, right? So I want to be able to meet those, but then also start to save. So I think sometimes it's just taking a hard look at our situation and making some changes, even though it feels difficult to do.
Great. Thank you. Well, we're just about up to the top of the hour, so I think we're going to close it here. I would encourage you all to either reach out to Oro and our concierge team can help you address any of the topics that were brought up today. Happy to help any of you. And again, it's a free benefit for all of you. You can also reach out and get in touch with Tara or MMI based on any of the content that she shared. We recorded this and we will make it available to you and to any of your colleagues that you may want to share this webinar with. But thank you so much, Tara. Really appreciate the collaboration and look forward to maybe having you on for a future webinar with our employee
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks,
our member
everybody.
base. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate all of you joining. Have a great day. Okay. Bye-bye.